it's very clear to us that we're in a century of cities and that tourism is also inevitably, inextricably intertwined with this process. These are the mega trends that all of you know about and think about, I guess, quite a lot. But I think it has very specific consequences for cities as well. I think it means that on the one hand, there are huge opportunities because cities are the places that are uniquely able to create that proximity, that density, that scale that both businesses and investors demand, but also innovators and talent, and of course visitors are increasingly demand, as we've heard from Peter and others. But the problem is that it's increasingly exposing this process, all the weaknesses, all the ways in which cities are underprepared, unprepared for all this huge level of growth that Gloria outlined. And I think that what we're observing is that around the world, very good urbanization, the sustainable urbanization we talk about, is actually very hard to achieve because it requires very effective management. And that as cities go through their evolution, as they absorb more growth and even more demand, I think it's going to mean that they have to improve that toolkit, improve the way they manage things all of the time. It's not a one-off process, it's constantly going on. I'd just like to make the point that I think that the role tourism plays in cities from the perspective of an urbanist is very different depending on what kind of city you are. This is one of the popular typologies that is often used to inform decisions by businesses and investors about where to go. That really identifies 10 different types of cities, and it's showing that globalization, as cities begin to identify in the way Eleanor explained, identify and project, reintroduce themselves to the world, develop a new identity, organize around it. Tourism has a particular set of roles to play along the way. What tourism does in order to help a city grow sustainably is different depending on what kind of city you are. If you're an innovation hub like Austin, tourism might have a slightly different role to play to support that growth than if you're a beacon of livability like Auckland, or if you're a diplomatic centre like Geneva. These cities all have different capacity constraints, different inherited assets that tourism, if it's going to be sustainable and going to be well managed, needs to observe, I think, a little bit more clarity going forward. You see and you know all around the world that there are dozens of cities that are beginning to adopt this kind of global leadership response to try and improve the way tourism is managed within cities, and at the same time improve the way the city itself is being managed for all sorts of purposes. That might be, as we've already discussed, the diversification of locations. It might be a pivot towards a high visitor, year-round kind of visitor. It might be capturing more of the value that tourism generates in an intelligent way, smart tech, smart enforcement, as Alex discussed. There's a whole menu, if you like, now, you can see around the world, and Alex's work, I think, really captures this well, of tools and approaches that cities need. My sort of broad comment and provocation, perhaps, is to say that I think every city in the world that's a great city is also a great city for tourism. It's also a great visitor destination. I don't think anywhere in the world can be a great city without tourism. But if you want a sustainable model of tourism, you need your city to develop more of those management tools, the governance systems and the leadership approaches that are fit for purpose. And this isn't just a one-off thing, it's a constant, it's a permanent task with new challenges arising all of the time and a new kind of approach required all of the time. And I think perhaps there's a case for becoming a more proactive civic leader in the cities that we all operate in to help cities, I think, fulfill their promise, replenish their assets that we see challenged at the moment, and ultimately become even greater destinations, more sustainable destinations in the future.